Hello, and welcome back to very beginning. I'm so excited to kickstart season 2 of my podcast. It's been a really long time. It feels like forever that I was sitting here and recording. And it feels so good to be back. A lot of things happened last year. I had to cut the season a bit shorter than expected, but we'll get into all of this. But I thought today would be perfect to start season 2 since it's January 11th, which is actually, I think, a new moon. So always a good way to start new things. Plus, it's 111, which is also the angel number for new beginnings. So I thought, Thursdays was not the day I was releasing episodes, but I guess for 2024, it seems that it is. So we'll go with that flow. Well, see, I teased a little bit on my Instagram channel that season 2 will be different, or that something new is coming and a lot of new things are coming. But what this means for this podcast is that season 2 will have quite the different focus. In season 1, it was all about interviews, and I still think, interviews are so important, and I want to continue doing them in some way or form because there are so many amazing guests that I can learn from, that we can learn from together. But one of my main focuses for this year is really to be as authentic as possible. I think that's something we all struggle at times. I know I myself struggle a lot with, and we can also dive into that, maybe a topic for another day, but, kind of wearing masks and trying our true selves and really being afraid of being truly ourselves and finding our own voice. And I think when I started the podcast last year, I was so excited to get into it, but it almost felt like in retrospect that I was sometimes even hiding a bit behind some guests, or, kind of was a bit afraid to just show myself a bit more authentically and vulnerably here. So that's why this season you'll see a lot more of me, a lot more of solo episodes. And also the big new thing is that season 2 will be all about fertility, or even I should say women's health. So I talked about it a bit last year or last season, but last year was a very turbulent one for me. A lot of new learnings, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of downs mostly, but also some really big ups. And especially when it has to do with women's health, I learned so much about fertility, about reproductive health. And I talked already last season a bit about my IVF learnings, and it seemed that those topics really seemed to resonate with a lot of people. And I just developed this really inner desire to talk more about these topics. And so many of them are still taboo topics, and really also this desire to help other women, other couples going through it. So that's why I wanted to not only do a fertility series, how I had planned it initially last year, but actually dedicate a whole season to all of these topics. And that doesn't mean that it's just going to be about, how to conceive, not at all. I really want to talk about all of the different things I learned really from coming off birth control and tracking my cycle and how that looked like, and even learning more about hormones, all the tools I use to naturally conceive, and then of course also going into IVF and all the different things I learned there, and how, the experience felt for me. And there's just so many, subtopics and really important things to talk about, to share when it comes to fertility and women's health. So this season will be all about that. There'll be a lot of episodes and topics kind of diving into all of these different buckets. But if there's something that you've kind of already heard or picked up from and would be like, oh, I would love for you to talk about this, or, maybe tell us a bit more about that, please do put it in the comments, because I would love to also really create content that serves you and that you find helpful. And to maybe even take a step back, as I was, writing a bit the script for this intro episode to this new season, I realized that since kind of, I dove right in last season with an interview, didn't even take the time to introduce myself, and, kind of almost, as I said, hid a little bit behind my interview partners. I wanted to share this one story, why I even, decided to start a podcast. And that was, or that is still something that I have to this day on my mood board or my vision board as my phone background, because it's something that I remind myself of every day. And that's also kind of why authenticity is so important to me. So I think it's now probably like a year and a half or 2 few years back, I was, kind of felt a bit stuck in my career, didn't really know, what direction to go in, and just had this kind of, wish, this desire, maybe I should start a podcast. I've always loved the audio medium. I used to work at a radio station when I was in university, did also a bit in kind of the TV space, and I just always kind of loved, communicating, connecting with people, sharing stories, being a storyteller. So a podcast seemed really natural, but at the same time also really, really outside of my comfort zone, because to those who know me know that I'm not, I always say, a selfie person, not judging if you are, but just me personally. I always find it really hard to put a camera in front of myself, to talk to it, to take, pictures or videos, even worse, right? So I had a lot of doubt. Should I do it? Should I not do it? And of course, also, what will people think? What will people say? All these doubts I think all of us have. And I was looking, I think, through different TED Talks just to kind of, seek some inspiration. And I found this one TED Talk that was all about like signs from the universe. And I thought like, oh, that sounds interesting. Like, sure, let's see. Maybe I can learn something about, how you can sometimes see or feel signs better that are being sent your way in one way or the other. And there was this really interesting TED Talk where basically this lady said that if there's something that you've been thinking about for a really long time and you're kind of unsure, should I do this or not? Should I go left or right? Just open a book, really any book, and open it on any page and then read the first sentence that, kind of springs into your eye, that you see on this page that you randomly select. And then see if that maybe helps you solve the question. So for me, of course, it was the question, should I start a podcast, yes or no? And I took, I think it was Michelle Obama's Becoming, opened a random page, and I literally remember this quote to this day because it was such a life-changing flash moment, because literally the sentence that I saw as the very first sentence on the page was, my job is to use my voice to be my authentic self, and that's just what I did. And I was literally just like, wow, that's crazy. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that story to really, introduce myself a little bit more, to explain why I'm doing this, how I got started, and, why being authentic and why authenticity is so important for me, especially in this season where I'm really trying to step out of my comfort zone. So yeah, as I said, it will be focused really on fertility this season. Maybe just like a few disclaimers. I'm not a doctor, not a medical professional. So whatever content I release is really based on my personal experience. I will invite some experts. There will be episodes with, kind of experts in the fields. So of course that's then a bit different, but just of course always a disclaimer that all things and everything that I share, even in this episode, based on personal experience. I talked a bit about it last year, but also when sharing kind of these personal stories, I really want to make sure we create a safe space. So also, of course, I always appreciate comments, but, in the comments, of course, always be mindful that so many of these topics are so sensitive to me, but also to other people, that people might be going through really difficult times. So that's also the reason why even, talking about all openness and authenticity, I'm still not going to be sharing, really specific numbers or values or results, just because I think those can be really tricky when we start comparing ourselves, or when we start, kind of being unsure, are my results good enough, and so on. So again, I just really want to make sure my content is helpful and inspiring and is not putting someone down. And lastly, with all this talk about fertility, just one little thing, one disclaimer that you will never really hear me say things like infertility, because I really try to be careful with my language. And I know infertility is a really established word in this space, but I just always think like what we say is what we attract. So when you say things like infertility, meaning like non-fertile, or even when you say things like I'm infertile, I always found that quite challenging. So I always like to speak, and I always even ask my doctors, to speak about fertility challenges, because for me personally, a challenge just seems like something that honestly motivates me, that I think I can overcome. Whereas infertility, or, not being fertile, sounds like something quite definite. So just a quick explanation here why sometimes I might say words that are not as commonly used maybe in this space, but that's something that's really important to me. So for this episode, for this intro episode, I wanted to close off last year and really dive into my 2023 fertility learnings. I'll focus on kind of three major ones. I'll also, kind of tease a few subtopics here and there. But as I said, there will be probably an episode on every single one of these big topics because there's just so much to unpack. But yes, I mean, 2023, as I said, was really, really challenging, going through, a really long process of trying to conceive, going through loss, going through IVF. There's been just many, many ups and downs. And I think the first learning throughout it all was really that mental health should never be underestimated. And I think when it comes to IVF, so much is focused on the physical, right? Because you're doing a lot of physical stuff. Your doctors are checking your physical, kind of how's your body reacting to the hormones, how are your bloods, how are your eggs growing, and so on and so on. But I think what really I learned is that mental aspect, that mental health aspect is so crucial, and I think even really crucial to your success in the entire journey, because it's just like I found the mental aspect to be so much more challenging than the physical aspect. And really last year gave me a whole new appreciation for mental health, but also for mental illness, because it's something I think our society still really, takes lightly, or still is kind of takes sometimes that approach of, oh, get over it, snap out of it, it's fine. But really what I learned, on my own skin last year is that sometimes you can't. And I mean, in my case, I wasn't in a depression. It was kind of, based on the synthetic hormones that I was taking or giving myself. But it's really crazy to think how, you can become so, kind of a different version of yourself and really feel down and really have days where, you can't almost like get out or like, go outside and enjoy, like, or be just honestly just be your own self. So mental health really is the most, I think, crucial thing that we have and that we need to focus on. And with that, I think, it's really important to us understand that everyone will have a different experience. For everyone, it will feel differently, for everyone going through different fertility challenges. And I mean, that even applies for all challenges in life, right? It will always feel differently. So again, I think we need to be really cautious about words we use, really cautious about advice we offer, because we never know what someone might be going through. So that, kind of mental health aspect is so crucial, but especially when you think like, oh, this person looks fine, this person looks happy, or this person, looks healthy, or might even have, or you might even think like, oh, wow, this person has everything that I want, but you don't know how, that person's doing mentally. So that's something I really learned, like one of the biggest lessons for me last year, to really, take that into consideration. And also with that, that it's also totally okay to not be okay. And I mean, that's a quote we've heard, I think, over and over in different contexts many times, but it's truly okay, right? Like to just not feel your best at one day or the other. And of course, like you seek help if that's something that's going on for a long time, or if it's something that, you feel like you need someone else's help with or advice with, that, and by that I mean not just kind of your partner or friend, but a medical professional. But I kind of tend to, pressure myself into, oh, just get up and get going. And I always say, like, I am a really positive person. But it's also sometimes fine to just, have a day of a good cry, or, just to feel a bit down. So almost kind of embracing that feeling of, today is not a good day, and that's totally fine. And that brings me to my second learning, and that is really, and sorry that these are kind of a bit of like downer learnings, but I mean, when you go through something challenging, of course, you also have some learnings that are a bit more on the meatier side. So the second one is really that the only way through it is through sometimes, right? And again, not something I came up with. I think also that quote we've heard many times, but even on New Year's, as I was sitting together with my husband and some friends who were celebrating with, when we were kind of all thinking, what was the biggest thing we learned in 2023? for me, that was really it, right? That the only way is through sometimes, that there are no shortcuts, that there are no easy paths, that no one can, take something from you and make it easier, or there's no pill you can swallow to make things easier. But sometimes you just have to feel it. And sometimes you just have to go through the mud and, kind of know that you will come out on the other side. And I think that's also really important because I remember even last year when I was working with my coach, and I've been open about it, that I work with a coach, that's something that's really been helpful, especially in the whole fertility process. But I remember I was going to a friend's house, and there would be a few couples that had kids and had babies. And I remember sending her a voice message and be like, quick, send me, I don't know, some meditation, some advice that I can, or like some exercise that I can do if I feel like really, sad seeing all these babies and being kind of reminded that we're not there yet. So I can just go to the bathroom and kind of, do this quick exercise or this quick meditation or this quick breathing exercise, and then just go get back and be all happy and smiley. And she was like, no, I'm not going to send you anything that will help you mask your feelings and, where you can just be by yourself in a room to, kind of force yourself into feeling something that actually is completely inauthentic to what you're currently feeling. And I think that was also an interesting learning that, that it's okay to not mask your feelings, that in those, there will be moments, right, where you're going through something and you see people where you feel like, oh, they're on the other side. They have what I desire so deeply. And this could be, in the case of fertility, having a baby, or this could be even, right, like if you're single and you are looking to have a relationship, or if you're, not married and you see someone happily married. I mean, so often we compare ourselves, right? So often we think like, oh, this person is exactly what I want. So that was really an interesting learning for me, to dive deep into emotions, to let a tear flow if you desire, and to not try to mask who you are in every moment. And with that, right, as I said, like with the sharing aspect, that's really my third learning from last year. And I think that's something that's guiding me now really through life, is that you are not alone and that sharing truly helps. And I mean, that's the whole reason why I'm sitting here, right? Why I decided to dedicate a whole season to this really sensitive topic. Because for me, it's honestly therapeutic. For me, I feel like talking about this, talking about the different challenges, has helped me process it, has helped me grieve many things. And I found, right, like if you do share it openly, and if you talk to people and be like, hey, actually this or actually that, or I'm going through these challenges right now, people start, be also more open to you and tell you like, oh, you know what, actually, yeah, it also took me 2 years to conceive this little child that, you're playing with right now, or, share other things. And for me, it really helped because it truly makes you understand that it's not you, it's not your body, or it's not you that's something wrong with, but, that many people go through these challenges. And with that, I think the statistics also that are so important to keep in mind. And I know I said I'll be careful with numbers, but I think these ones are really important to keep in mind, right? Because when we talk about things like miscarriage, which is still such a huge taboo topic, it's insane to think about that 1 in 3 or 1 in 4, depending on what statistic you look at or what country you look at, 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage. And that's just, I think, mind-blowing, because do you know, so like how many people do you know that openly talk about it? I personally know, I think 1 or 2, but I'm sure so many more people that I know have gone through it, and not blaming anyone who doesn't want to share it, because it is something that's really personal. But I think it's still so shameful, or still, shame on our society, that women feel like they can't talk about it, and women feel like, yeah, they're left alone with this topic and with this grief. And, you're supposed to just move on and kind of snap out of it and continue trying. And I think it's important to remember that statistic, right? That so many women go through this, and so many pregnancies end in miscarriage, because it helps you to kind of, I mean, I don't want to say normalize, because it will be traumatic every single time, but to at least understand that you're not alone in this. And the same thing is, right, like with like trying to conceive or fertility challenges. I think I'm based in the UK, so looking at UK statistics, it says that 1 in 7 couples struggle with fertility challenges. And I mean, that number might not seem super high, right? Like it's roughly 14%, 14. So you might think like, oh, wow, okay, well, that's not that many. But I think the way it's really defined is couples that unsuccessfully try for a year. Now, if you have been in this phase of your life where you're trying, you know how taxing that whole process is, right? And when you then think deeper into it and look deeper through statistics, you start seeing or you start learning that every single month, right? Let's say you're both super healthy, and even if you have intercourse at the exact right time of ovulation, it's only roughly about a 20% chance every month to conceive. And that's for a couple where the woman, I would say, is in her mid-30s. I think when you're in your mid-20s, the chances are around 25 to 30%, but if you're in your 40s, the chances are only around 5%. So I think that's so important to also keep in mind when we talk about the challenges of trying to conceive, when we talk about fertility challenges, how many couples are affected by it. And that's not just, couples going through fertility treatments, but really couples where it just takes many, many months to, naturally conceive, even if everything is fine, because that's, by nature how it's designed, that you don't have a 100% chance every month. So, and everyone, kind of who's been there knows how taxing that is, knows how it can really take over your whole life and can really make you, go crazy, because if you want to get pregnant, you want to get pregnant like today and like at least this month. So, super important to keep in mind that no matter, what your health situation, no matter what your fertility situation, you are not alone. And there are many, many other couples going through the same, and truly sharing helps. So these are really my 3 big learnings. I want to keep this episode quite crisp and short because it's the very first one to start with, just to give you a quick overview, to close off the last year and to dive deep into this great new year. And yeah, as I said, I mean, all the episodes now will be focused on really subtopics in the space of fertility. Next episode will be all about my experience with my menstrual cycle, my period, how it was for me coming off birth control, and then also tips for that, or kind of all my toolbox that I used to conceive naturally, and kind of all the apps and stuff that I found helpful. So that will be next episode, and many more to come. So thank you so much for tuning in today. If you're new to this podcast, welcome, and if you're a returning listener or viewer, then welcome back. And again, if you have any questions, comments, topics that you'd like me to cover, do put in the comments. Also make sure to follow Very Beginning on Instagram. And I look forward to seeing you next time.